question is DeFi already too centralized anyways? So we talk about CeFi, we talk about DeFi, we talk about Celsius as an example of these. We talk about BlockFi, right, as an example of these kind of like centralized DeFi options. But is DeFi just itself too centralized? We have an opinion piece here. We're going to get into it. DeFi suffers from too much centralization. What can be done? If any part of their business model incorporates centralization, then it is centralized no matter what other decentralized feature it deploys. That is an interesting quote. That's very interesting to me, because if we look at some cryptocurrencies, right, or blockchains that really push decentralization and use that as a term to, market, essentially, to sell their given product to the masses. They're like, we're hardcore on decentralization, but we're going to take a 10% dev fee over here to pay our devs, right? We're going to take that over there. We're going to take this and put it into a foundation, and we're going to put it over here. We're going to control the changes that happen on the network. Just even from an actual blockchain perspective, there are a lot more coins out there that have centralized portions within them. And it's extremely important to pay attention to those and pick them out of the weeds. I see a lot of them, and a lot of them in places where, unfortunately, like, I think that it does deceive a lot of people from that perspective. And it's interesting to say, if any part of their business model incorporates centralization, then it is centralized no matter what what other decentralized feature it deploys. I like that quote. Quote, it's vital that people understand how the assets are pledging to a centralized entity are being used. Yep. And another quote, if users demand more decentralization with crypto lending, they simply have to vote with their funds by moving them. Yes, sir. Agreed. Like much of the crypto sector, decentralized finance is having a tough time. Not only has its total value locked in fallen by 70% since December, but various platforms within the not so decentralized DeFi space have been threatened with collapse, with Celsius halting of withdrawals being the latest and possibly the most dramatic manifestation of the ongoing crisis. While Celsius's inclusion within the DeFi subsector nominally makes it a decentralized platform, at least in the use of the blockchains, its control over user funds demonstrates that it was too centralized. Coupled with the collapse of Terra, which has been the second biggest DeFi platform, it has raised serious questions as to whether DeFi needs to become more fully decentralized, and as to whether it can be. Opinion on this is mixed, with some industry figures affirming that centralization provides various benefits over truly decentralized platforms. At the same time, there seems to be an agreement that decentralization alone is hardly a guarantee against future collapses and crashes. Yeah, but the point of having it decentralized is that everybody's playing by the same rules, right? So when you have a centralization factor within DeFi, right? We talk about Celsius or whatever. We can use them as an example. Celsius themselves are not playing by the same rules as the rest of the fucking market, okay? And that is a big problem, because now you have delegitimized the entire DeFi ecosystem, because Celsius is not playing by the rules. They shut down, right? They shut it down to protect themselves as an entity, and they screw everybody else over that is playing by the rules. It is no different than traditional finance and fiat systems that everybody is so disgusted with that they want to use cryptocurrency to get out of, but now we're just seeing it within cryptocurrency. So anytime you add centralization, you add that factor of a group of people going ahead and not playing by the rules and manipulating it. Over-the-counter trades, for example, right? Figures within the industry are more or less in agreement that recent events involving Celsius and other platforms highlight the uncomfortable level of centralization within DeFi. Quote, recent events concerning Celsius, 3 Arrows Capital, and Lido show that the lack of decentralization poses an issue to DeFi, end quote, said Tim Lays, co-founder of DeFi protocol Swarm. According to Lays, part of the issues in DeFi is that decentralization occurs on a sliding scale, with platforms being composed of a mix of decentralized and centralized elements. Quote, individuals and institutions can still benefit from the architecture and deployment of DeFi innovation, like self-custody and transparency, even if other parts of a service are somewhat centralized. However, the problem highlighted by recent events from major lending platforms is partly a centralization issue, but also transparency concern, including oversight of what happens inside a protocol, end quote, he told cryptonews.com. Exactly what I was saying, right? That just reiterates the problem. Looking specifically at Celsius, it too is a mix of decentralized and centralized elements. However, it's arguable that it was centralized precisely in the most sensitive areas. Quote, it utilizes the smart contracts and ledger infrastructure of DeFi, but customer funds get aggregated in custodial wallets, which are controlled by the company, end quote, said Ryan Shea, a crypto economist at trading platform Trax. And that's an extremely important thing to take into consideration, right? The worst part you could centralize, the absolute worst part is custody of the funds. That's the absolute worst part. So that's really where we're at with that. Give me 1 second, guys. We got wild Pokemon appearing everywhere. It just is what it is. It's summer. It's summer, boys. All right. So for Shea, decentralization and centralization is a binary issue, meaning that centralization is only one important area. In only one important area is enough to make a platform basically centralized. I agree. Quote, if any part of their business model incorporates centralization, such as aggregating customer funds into a custodial wallet controlled by the lending company, then it is centralized no matter what other decentralized features it deploys. That said, many other big name crypto lenders like BlockFi and Crypto.com also deploy centralizing structures such as hot wallets to conduct transactions, he told Crypto News. Have you guys noticed that, like, one of the things I like is that Crypto.com does not have me talk about their lending portions, their lending platform. And Crypto.com is great to liquidate your crypto assets and pay for your bills. That's what I use them for. That is their strong point. That is where they're suited. They also have your NFT stuff. They also have their lending stuff. From my perspective, as far as that goes, you want to stay away from centralized lending everywhere, right? Like that, just, you want to completely avoid it because you can't control those funds. Somebody else is controlling them. And that APY inevitably, and that return rate is inevitably going to change, right? Every time. And if it changes too much, if they're not controlling it properly, you're in a pickle. If a DeFi platform or company wants to be truly decentralized, it has to operate on a more or less fully peer-to-peer basis, with all transactions executed using smart contracts run on a distributed network of computers. Quote, good examples of such platforms, thank you, include Aave, which we've covered on the channel, Maker, and Compound. I haven't covered Maker or Compound, but we have covered Aave. You can go look those up. Unlike CeFi, centralized finance, users do not have to trust the lending company. Instead, they have to trust the integrity of the code that executes the smart contracts. Code is law. I wish there still was. Others agree with the view that if there's centralized control of user funds, then no DeFi platform is really decentralized, no matter what else it might operate on a distributed basis. Quote, this is the case with most DeFi platforms, which are decentralized only in name, but not in reality, such as Celsius. That's why we call them CeFi on this channel, right? Centralized for the centralized part. So, centralized finance, which is funny because you would think like fiat, but yes, like we say CeFi is short for talking about any type of company like this, like BlockFi or whatever it may be. To avoid this problem going forward, the industry participants should focus on the push for deeper decentralization, which will, in turn, lead to a better overall product, end quote, said Dan Keller, co-founder of decentralized computational network Flux. It's interesting that Mr. Daniel Keller is talking about this because I do have, okay, it's fine. I'm still worried about that dev fund. Look, I get worried about dev funds. It is what it is. Of course, even with the decentralization of funds and transfers, centralization in other areas can still cause problems for DeFi platforms and crypto more generally. Quote, for example, if too many nodes in Lido are operated on AWS, which is Amazon Web Services, a cloud computing platform. We talk about them a lot on this channel. It makes the network more attackable, jeopardizing the goal of distributed network infrastructure and governance, said Timo Lays. Woo! Hey, Ethereum, move into proof of stake. Read that. Lays argues that if DeFi wants to become more decentralized, compliance structures need to be introduced via a mixture of regulation and self-regulation. Quote, the entire end-to-end setup of node structures and smart contracts deployments should be auditable and clear to investors. That is not a problem specific to the current market turmoil, but something more fundamental in the infrastructure of DeFi, end quote, he said. The collapse of Celsius, which used users' funds to make investments on other platforms, highlights that an essential ingredient of decentralization should be transparency. Quote, it is vital that people understand how the assets they are pledging to a centralized entity are being used. The problem with committing assets to unregulated counterparties is the black box of rehypothecation and the lack of recourse should something go wrong. There you go. In traditional finance, deposit-taking institutions like banks have a set of rules governing how they can use client capital and are constantly monitored. Something like this will be needed for DeFi to be compelled to operate on a consistently decentralized basis. Yet Lays also says that platforms and users alike should push for more self-custody. Quote, the easiest way to prevent institutions from being creative with client funds is to keep custody of them. The architecture of DeFi enables you to retain full control over your assets. Add this to a regulatory layer and you have a winning combination, end quote, he said. Ryan Shea also affirms that users should push for more decentralization, including self-custody. Companies and crypto lenders are no different, primarily responding to customer demands because without customers, there is no company. There already exists numerous functioning DeFi lenders, so if users demand more decentralization with their crypto lending, they simply have to vote with their funds by moving them away from centralized lenders to decentralized lenders, end quote, he said. However, Shea also offers some warnings in relation to the push for more decentralization, suggesting that CeFi does have some benefits. All right, what are the benefits? Quote, first, CeFi lenders have historically tended to offer higher yields on their products than DeFi exchanges. I mean, hold your horses there. Hold your... Sure, they offer higher yields, but then you can't get the yield out and they just shut down your withdrawals. So is it really a higher yield? I'm just saying, is it really a higher yield at the end of the day? It's really just a no yield. You just lost your money. You threw it into a sinkhole is what you did. This ability to offer better returns has prompted speculation that they tend to invest in riskier products or enhance yield via rehypothecation, whereby collateral is lent out again to back another loan, generating additional interest payments, he said. On top of this, many DeFi platforms don't offer fiat on and off ramps, meaning that many mainstream users will continue to prefer the convenience of CeFi until today, and now we have it. Thank you, Immutable X. There you go. So that's going to be coming. Don't worry about it. We got it. It's coming, boys. It's coming. We're moving in the right direction. Quote, government regulation is being increasingly applied to crypto transactions, and the primary target is the on and off ramp. Indeed, it is the only viable target for governments to apply regulations such as KYC and AML, anti-money laundering rules. because they can threaten exclusion from traditional finance services for non-compliant crypto companies, he said. Don't worry, this resolves itself and there's really nothing they can do at the end of the day. Just saying. There's also the argument that decentralization on its own won't cause a significant reduction in the kinds of collapses the market has witnessed in recent weeks. What really matters is the quality of the team behind the project. That said, the same is also true for DeFi lenders. Is the team of sufficient quality to ensure that software bugs and or the design of the smart contracts are robust enough to withstand dramatic market events, said Shea. Ultimately, it's arguable that only regulation and transparency can ensure a substantial decline in risk when it comes to DeFi, regardless of how centralized or not a platform is. As Timo Lays concludes, regulation offers layers of transparency to existing products and innovation. In the future, investors should be advised to only engage with DeFi products where process and smart contracts are fully auditable. There is a path for recourse in the event of malpractice, and they have full transparency over how collateral is being used. Or just control your own wallets and only participate in DeFi. Sure, your on-ramp and off-ramp's a little bit difficult, but everybody has Cash App and can buy Bitcoin at this time. So you know what? It is what it is. Get to work. I'm pretty sure you can figure it out without the need for all of this craziness, okay? Thanks for checking out this clip from the Crypto Mining Show. You can check out the full episode here or more crypto content down here. Also, I'd like you to check out my locals page at sonofatech.locals.com, where you can become a member for free or choose to be a $5 a month supporter that unlocks additional content.